Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Hope y'all have had a great Tuesday and a great start to your work week so far. We're going to switch over and talk about the potential next week for a major storm system. Now, this is looking more so for the south central and central U.S., so definitely not looking to really necessarily affect the eastern U.S., but this storm can actually lead to a pattern change for the eastern U.S., and we will talk more on that in the coming days if this major storm system looks to come to friction. So, yeah, I'm not necessarily going to be talking about the weather in the eastern U.S., but this storm system I am going to be talking about could lead to a big-time change for the eastern U.S. as we get into the mid to latter part of October. So we're going to talk about the storm system because it has the chance to be a big-time, almost like a seasonal changing storm, meaning a lot of areas are going to get their first snows of the year. That this is going to be the real initiation of the second severe weather season with this storm system. Potentially, this has a chance to downtrend for sure. We're almost a week out. We're still very far out. So as far as getting very super detailed about what this 50-mile radius is going to have the highest tornado threat, we're not going to do that. We're just going to talk about what we do know. So if you guys have not subscribed, hit that subscribe button. I make content every single day. I'm also a storm chaser, not a full-time storm chaser or anything. Not big enough to be able to actually go out and chase this storm system, which I would absolutely love to. But in the future, I hope to do so. And thanks to all of y'all's support, I'm working my way to my goal of eventually doing something like that. So thank y'all for the amazing support. Appreciate it all. Like the video if you like it. My setup will get much better. So my content will get better. So let's get going here. There's a good little bit to talk about, but we're not going to get very, very detailed, but it's about as detailed as we can. So right here, this is 500 millibar wind speeds. So it's not the lowest area of the atmosphere, but about the midway point. It's not very, very high up, but the reason I'm showing you this at first, because it's high enough to where we can see it above the higher elevations out west. So what you're going to watch here, we're getting into this weekend, not a lot going on. There's a storm system that moves through. Now, this is a big system as it is, but this is what you call positively tilted. So it's a positive tilted trough here, injecting across basically the lower Rockies and into the south central U.S. This will have a chance to produce some severe weather, I think, but usually when you have a positive tilted trough, it's normally a sign of a weakening system. And sometimes they can get to a neutral or negative tilted trough. And when you get to a negative tilted trough, which is troughs that dig more so like this, then that's when you have the big time severe weather outbreak potential. This first system, as we get into early next week, that will be the case with this. And I don't think it'll be a big system, but it almost sets the tone for the second system, a big time trough injection out west into the desert southwest, into the Four Corners area here, right into this area. You see this dig right here? This is a big time digging trough. And you notice this one really isn't positively tilted that much. It's more so neutral and maybe gets to negative by the time it gets into the south central U.S. What that does here is right here, it produces a lot of wind energy to try to, speak in an easily way here. So it creates a lot of wind energy. It creates a lot of shear, and shear is a component that you need for not necessarily a tornado outbreak, but for favorable conditions for tornadoes. So that might be the case here in the panhandle of Texas and Oklahoma, and just portions right into here, covering areas of Oklahoma, Kansas, and potentially even southeast Colorado, and maybe getting a little further north. But talking about the exact details on where and when, very hard. We know this is going to happen early to midway next week. There's going to be a big-time storm system. Whether it produces a severe weather outbreak, that is a big-time question. But we know that this has been showing up on all models for a few days now. So if this comes into friction, it's a great job by the models of picking this up. Now we look at 850s here. And give me 1 sec. But if we look at 850s here, which is a little bit lower in the atmosphere, well, a good bit lower, we're going through in time, we're getting into this weekend, and you notice this first system that gets going here, that positively tilted trough that moves through, might promote a little bit of nasty weather depending on where you are. But really, we're looking at this dig right here, and it's lower. The wind energy is lower in the atmosphere, so it's not showing up over the Rockies because it's much lower. in altitude here. So it shows up right here going across the south central U.S. and the just the central Midwest here. And notice these big time, you have 50 to 60 to 65 knots of winds here in the 850 range of the atmosphere. So there's a good chance that when you wake up Wednesday morning, depending on where you are, if you're in Oklahoma, Nebraska, Kansas, and forgive me my hesitation with all my terms and everything. It's been a while since I've talked about severe weather, so I'm a little bit rusty here. But it's a good chance that when you wake up in the south central U.S., the central Midwest, you're going to wake up and it's going to have that look in the sky where it looks like the clouds are just moving 100 miles an hour from south to north, and that's a low level, what you call a low level jet. And that'll be screaming ahead of a big-time cold front that's going to end up pushing through this area. Usually with these systems this time of the year, when you have severe weather, normally the next day it's much cooler. So, it's the same thing in spring. Normally when you have a big-time severe weather outbreak in March and April, even in the southeast, normally it's very humid, it's warm, and then the next day when the severe weather moves out, the new air mass moves in, and that's normally a cooler air mass. Well, the same thing in the fall. When you're trying to change seasons into the warmer months, into the cooler months, normally especially if it's an abrupt change between two air masses, normally it's associated with severe weather. A lot of times it is, in a big-time storm system. So that's going to be the case here. So if we look at this right here, and I'm using Pivotal, I don't like Pivotal just because it's irritating to use for me, but if you start looking at moisture plumes as far as dew points and how much moisture is in the atmosphere, these are dew points. It shows a good job of where the dry air and the moist air is, obviously. But if we're going through here in time, we're getting into early next week, check out this big surge of moisture that happens right here as we're getting into Tuesday. Gosh, I hate this site. As we're getting in, it's not user friendly when you're trying to talk to an audience in a video, but you look at this big time surge in dew points ahead of this massive cold front. Yeah, dew points in the 60s, pushing 70 in certain areas, and then 50 miles back to the west where the cold front boundary is, you have dew points in the 20s and the teens. So it's a big time abrupt shift in an atmosphere. And that is promoting. That's another thing. It's a big time promotion for severe weather. So you look at this, and let's give it a second to pull up since it's about as slow as molasses here. You look at this, and how does this correspond with shear? Well, it promotes a big time high shear atmosphere. And check out that trough injection right over the southwest and the Four Corners region. And look at all this shear screaming over. You got according to this, 60 to 70, almost 80 knots of shear, according to the latest European. Now, this is 200 hours out. It's pretty far out. As we're getting into Wednesday afternoon and evening, it's a lot of speed and directional shear. So I think there's going to be an atmosphere. I don't think it's going to be widespread storms, widespread supercells, but I think there's going to be some storms somewhere around this area that's going to have a chance in a warm sector, and basically in the section of this storm that's still very warm and moist, that promotes some tornadic storms. And we'll have to see how this evolves here. There's a lot to figure out, but there's some big time signals on the models early on that there is going to be a big time system here. And you look at and this is really far out, so it's hard to take this serious, but if you look at what you call the Energy Helicity Index, which combines helicity with CAPE, you have some values from the 2.5 to 3 range, which is definitely respectable as far as a tornado threat. So there is some tornado energy right into here, but it's hard to look at that. It's hard to look at things like that so far out. But I will mention, as far as the snowfall with this, as this trough injection is moving north, big time cold air is going to be funneling behind it. How far east does this make it? Does it make it all the way over here? We're not sure of that, but there's going to be a lot of energy on the backside of this trough injection, and there's going to be the biggest snow event of the season so far for the Rockies and Montana, Wyoming, Idaho, all your higher elevations. I don't think this is going to be a snow event really for Denver, so it's not going to be one of them early season crazy snow events for Denver, but it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out. I'll tell you what, the GFS, which this was the Euro I was just looking at, the GFS is much more, holy cow, it's taking forever. The GFS is much more east as far as in the expansion of the snowfall, which actually has some snow making it all the way into areas of South and North Dakota and much further east into the lower elevations as far as the non-mountainous areas of Wyoming. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I think this is going to be the first major storm system in the U.S. of the fall. And I don't think this is going to affect the eastern U.S., but we're going to wait to see as we're getting into the weekend how much of this cold air is going to make it into the eastern U.S. Because what it looks like right now, for looking at this, is we'll look at this right here, is it looks like this trough is going to dig right here, but then it's going to it's not going to buckle the jet stream down here is what I'm trying to say. So you're not going to have some huge country clearing cold front that makes it through. So that's why I don't think this is ultimately going to be that cold front that we want to bring nice fall air here in the eastern U.S. But a lot to figure out here. I know I branched away from talking about the eastern U.S., but this is going to be an interesting storm to watch. I'm not going to talk about this each day until it comes, but when we get a little bit closer, I'll probably make another video on it. We get a little bit more confident on what's going to happen here. I'll make another video on it. But as far as the tropics, it's very quiet. There's not a lot going on there right now. I don't want to say this too soon, but I'm really starting to lean towards, not us necessarily being done with the tropics, but I'm starting to think as far as any kind of serious impacts to the eastern U.S. or for the U.S., I'm starting to lean away that we might just be done, and that's a blessing, honestly. So that's all I got, guys. We'll watch everything, and thank y'all for tuning in, and y'all have a great night.